As the offseason draws to a close, a familiar friend rejoins the show. You don't want to miss it on this week's episode of the IndyBall Report podcast. Back again, episode number 318 of the IndyBall Report podcast. Arguably the last episode of the offseason, as by this time next week, there will be baseball being played.
Pretty crazy. Kind of gives me anxiety about getting these previews wrapped up, but it's fine.
Imagine if you hadn't even started your offseason prep work or like your Atlantic League preview work. Couldn't and wouldn't be me at all.
That's a far more reasonable thing for you, where you're looking at the rosters and then kind of go and vibe off of that. Like, I just checked. Hold on, I can give you an
Indy
exact
Vibes report
number.
stays unbeaten.
Indy Vibes report is actually, that's beautiful. What was it? I had an exact count of how many guys short I am currently, but yeah, I know. The problem right now is I also am trying to press to get some of the American and Frontier guys done, because I'd rather not have to fit that all into like 2 weeks together. Yeah. And I'm just drowning. Yeah. Oh God, the work list is not strong. I gotta tell you, how many guys left? Oh, not bad. 30.
Oh, that's
good. Like nothing. That's nothing. I mean, just on my list, I got 419 Frontier and American Association guys sitting on deck still. So.
I mean, really, like, look, if you divvy this up to like 5-6 guys a day, you're set.
This happens every year. And I thought, so every year in the projection model, there's an issue somewhere, that makes sense, because something won't become apparent until like the right guy comes through, where you go, wait a minute. Like he lands on that weird like quirk that isn't measured out correctly, just right to make his numbers stand out in a way that also don't make sense. So you need a couple things to line up. And usually that's in like the first 5 days of doing projections. I've been doing projections probably for like a little over a month and a half now. Okay. And just on Tuesday, I found an issue. And I'm like 1,200 players in. So it only affects pitchers, but I'd like go back and like auto adjust a couple things in particular.
No. See, this is where you just say this is the way the model was meant to work, and you run with that.
We're disrespecting AAA this year. Screw them. It was like in that conversion of like AA and AAA.
How many guys have AAA experience this year that this affects?
I mean, so freaking many, dude.
It just sounds like that's how the model was designed to be.
What I'll say is, I hit a point on Tuesday afternoon where I realized it was easier to make a separate little like not script, but like formula to run through it that would, instead of going back and fixing each individual one, could like take like just fix the one individual thing. So instead of like using a thing I already had made to fix this stuff, it was easier to make a new thing entirely to go back and fix it. I was like,
well,
so mad.
We'll get to see the full lengths of how great of a fix this is next week when we do the Atlantic League preview. That's going to be the bulk of that week's show. And we do know that there's going to be one player that you don't have to run back through all of this, which of course would be Daryl Thompson. That will kick us off for the week, as he is done in Southern Maryland. After 13 years, he's no longer on the coaching staff. He just came through the pipeline earlier today. And it's a big shock. Probably the only real mainstay and definitely the face of the franchise is now done there, and really a face of the Atlantic League and Indy ball as a whole is without a landing spot as of now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to try to split this conversation into, what we know and what we can surmise or what is rumored, and we'll go from there, because there's a lot of stuff that this is a tough one where like a lot of people have, I've been cooking on this for probably about 2 months, I think, that this was going on and that we should expect some sort of movement. And it is so hard. Nobody wants to go on the record with this. I've talked to maybe a dozen people about it. Everyone seemed pretty informed. And it was February 23rd that I got this. So It's been weird. So I have a lot of matching up stories, but nobody who wants to be like, yes, I'll put my name on this. So what we know is that he ain't in Southern Maryland, and it seems like he will not be joining Southern Maryland. What is, we'll kind of go back and forth here. What's rumored is that new ownership is in. By the way, it's interesting that there's not been an announcement of that new ownership, but we'll talk about that. I think I have a theory on that. It seems like that ownership did not want to pay what Daryl was getting paid.
So new ownership is this.
Yeah, I mean, I'd ballpark $5,000 to $6,000 a month probably throughout the season. I don't know that for sure, but that seems to be what the top level player coaches are getting right now.
All right, so it's about $5,000 for that would be May, June, July, August, September.
Yeah,
so about 25 for the season. Call it. We'll round up, say 30.
Yeah, which is interesting because now they're gonna have to pay a pitcher, maybe two, because of the way Daryl eats innings. So that's a minimum of $2,400 a month, plus a coach, which you figure costs $2,000 or $3,000 a month, and we're right back up at like $5,400 ish. So that's weird. I don't know what to do with that. But.
I mean, it depends on the coach you get, right? If you get a coach for about two, and then the other two players you get fairly cheap just to eat innings for about $1,000 a clip, then you have four, and you're saving about $1,000 to $2,000. Now, is it penny pinching? Yeah, but
so
the pun slipped in there too. Crab team penny pinches.
Nice, good job.
Yeah, proud of myself.
I'm trying to like sift through all the stuff I sort of bumped into and what I think is seeming to check out more. There was a rumor going on that the person coming in to be the pitching coach is like related to ownership. That's not the vibe I get from what's his face from Blanton, who they brought in. Okay.
Do we know what his background is? Or?
Here's my weird thing. I don't even know like who is the new ownership. I can't even pin that down.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. So maybe he is. I don't think he is, but that was the rumor at one point that was what was going on. So I don't know about all that, but I don't think that's what's happening. But I do think, I think they said, we're paying how much for this guy. It doesn't seem worth it. I think Daryl's probably tired. I don't know this. I could see him being tired of working with that organization. They're exhausting. And I've heard from a lot of people that they wouldn't want to get involved. I've always been of the mind that seems like Stan Clyburn stays around there because they kind of leave him alone, let him do what he wants. And that's not a bad arrangement as a manager. And I'm not sure I'm not sure that he would be there if it wasn't for that. It's just a pain of an organization to deal with. And it seems like even with a new chapter potentially coming, this is just sort of a different flavor, unfortunately. So that's something that is interesting to look at. My other thing is, it's official. He's not there. I'm probably a little more comfortable. I'm going to reach out to Daryl himself and see if I can get some sort of feel on where his head's at. I think there was at least some conversation involving him, how active he was in it. It's hard to pin down about pitching somewhere this year or coaching somewhere this year. I mean, if this is the end of Daryl Thompson in indie ball, that sucks. I think we can agree. Yeah. That's not right. That he doesn't deserve that unless he's like, hey, my arm is done, which the numbers don't look good. We threw a lot of innings.
But he also has a lot of career innings on that arm.
And talk about a guy, though, who would deserve better and would deserve, even if he goes somewhere else, he deserves a victory lap in Southern Maryland. But, okay, fine. Southern Maryland's not an option. He deserves that. Yeah, I mean, I need to do the comparison with other league record books, but if you look at the Atlantic League record book, he is far and away the record holder in innings pitched, strikeouts, anything, wins, all of it. He's long gone. It's insane to try to contextualize just what Daryl Thompson has been to indie ball. And also, I mean, as it's a little, again, hard to pin down exactly what his influence is, but it does seem he was also one of the better pitching coaches year over year and there was a bit of a step back last year, but I think there was also a step back in what Southern Maryland was bringing player wise. But we talk a lot about how there are not many major league guys that come through Southern Maryland, and year after year, that pitching staff was right up there with one of the best in all of indie ball. That bullpen was always nasty, and a lot of times it would be guys who weren't that impressive to start, and they would get better as they go. And I mean, he kind of was the model for a great veteran player coach. And
the thing is too, Southern Maryland would find guys and kind of piece them in along the way. Like even if there were replacements mid-season, they wouldn't be world beaters, but they also were no slouches. They could hang in this league, and that's an impressive feat in and of itself to find either college guys that can do it or recently released guys, normally no higher than high A, that can hang around. So clearly there is something to it.
When my limited time in Lexington, Southern Maryland was in town, and I got to meet Daryl. I'd met him once before, but we hadn't really it was in passing, and I actually got to talk to him for a little while. And I was struck by everybody on the team who walked by him, young guys, old guys, whatever, would dap him up, would say, hey, he'd be like, how you doing? Whatever, like checking in on them. And it was very clearly that's like how he was just operating. And I cannot overemphasize the importance over a long indie ball season of having an indie ball vet who is that guy and who can be that person to a club. It's the natural
leader on the team.
Yeah. So not only am I sort of endorsing like how valuable Daryl Thompson is and how this is a shame if this is how this ends and how I really hope it isn't. But I'm also endorsing my belief that Southern Maryland might be real bad this year. Like we need to keep an eye on that one. I mean, I can even pull what I'm not at the end of the projections here, but I can at least pull what I'm looking at while you're giving your thoughts here.
Yeah, no, I feel as though this isn't just Daryl calling it quits, because if that was the case, I feel as though the organization, despite, how they've operated either in the past or as of recent, they would still make some sort of post saying, this is the end. Congratulations on the career. Thank you for everything.
That's it.
That kind of thing.
No post.
There is no send off, right?
Oh, and may I, one more thing, completely chicken shit move from Southern Maryland, because they didn't announce their coaching staff all the way out until they're in like mid spring training. And then they announce it publicly today, and tomorrow they have their fan fest. So it's very clearly they were like, okay, like the jig is up tomorrow. Like we can't have no Daryl Thompson when our season ticket holders are here and hanging around. Like that's not going to work. So it was the last day they could announce this. So yeah, it's a classic Southern Maryland move in the way they communicate and the way they handle things. It's just like disappointing from an organization that's been in this league for so long and really should at this point be an anchor point within indie ball and the Atlantic League. It's just like to consistently see them be unprofessional and then have new ownership come in and the unprofessionalism seems to be continuous. Just really frustrating. It almost makes you wonder, like, hey, who's the least common denominator here at both ownership groups who's run the show over there? But that's for other people to fill in the blanks on.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're getting at. Plus, I mean, this just is mishandling. If you knew he wasn't going to come back, even as late as a month ago, you announce it then. At least then you can get through the initial shockwave of it, where, okay, he's not coming back. There's going to be people upset with it. But at least they won't be upset at your fan fest. They'll get over it over the next month or so.
Right.
Not to mention, too, I just wanted to throw one thing in. It's also not exactly fair to Jason Blanton here either, who has to now step into this role. I mean, and just looking him up here, he does have a history. Like he's been around indie ball starting in 05. He pitched around the Can-Am and the Atlantic League for a while. Then in 2014, he was a pitching coach. He was actually with the Mariners organization for a little bit. And then in 2016, he wound up being the pitching coach in New Britain. 17, wanted to go into the Indians organization, was all normally around like low A, high A type guy, and eventually wound up country or like county, Lake County. I was like, I always get confused.
I do it every time.
Yeah. In like late 2010s, 2000, COVID messed all that up, and then he was with the Red Sox organization in 21, 22, and 23. But he didn't coach in 24, and now in 25, he looks like he's back. So he has experience kicking around, mainly with younger guys, which I'm not sure that means, hey, we're planning on going cheaper here with guys that probably aren't Atlantic League level guys. And like, honestly, looking at his background, if he was hired in the Frontier League, I'd actually be kind of hyped for this. But just like that's not really the caliber of pitcher we're having in the Atlantic League. It's more like, you're back end of the bullpen kind of guys that are more like, all right, it's a blowout type, or everybody else is tired are going to be like your high A types. But I kind of expect AA level on average among your actual workhorses that you're going to see here. And
yeah,
the dude really hasn't done too much work with that level of pitchers. So I just don't necessarily know if he's the guy there, but he's definitely done enough to be worthy of a shot before I actually judge him. But for him to have to step in under this circumstance is not exactly fair to him, especially when already he was going to get compared to the job Daryl was going to do. But now, just dropping and running, that's not right to him.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah, I mean, these projections are going to change, but like the baseline that Southern Maryland's looking at this year was like 56 wins, 70 losses. So not great. Okay. I think better than last year though. But I think they're one of the teams that I need to still do a lot of work on what that is, because the playing time situation is not clear, but they're not going to get in the weeds there. It is, yes, I think I'm going to bring it up because it's interesting. The Aaron Rodgers interview on Pat McAfee yesterday was interesting in a weird way, which was people like, he didn't like, it was all hyped up for some big announcement. He didn't make one. I'm like, yeah, okay. But it was interesting things he said about the Jets organization. How they went about some things. And it was very much like, oh, that's weird. But there were a couple of like bangers he dropped in there that were to people who are in the game. No, like, ooh, like that's a much larger red flag than you would think. You would think it's weird from the outside, but if you're on the inside, you're like, whoa, like that's how they went about some of this. And it seems like one of those things with Southern Maryland where there's a lot of those things. So that's why when what happened last year happened, and we'll talk about that again in a second, we weren't necessarily surprised because of the way they seem to operate and the way that we see them do the little things compared to other organizations. And this feels like a good example because I have done limited baseball operations. I've done plenty of communications and PR work with companies. And I work with people. Like I've worked with people my whole life. So this is not the most challenging thing to pull off. It is, hey, Daryl, new ownership here, obviously coming in. We have a different vision for how things are going to be. We need to do a lot of investment off the field and with the fan experience. We're going to have to change the way we're spending here to make things work. Unfortunately, we're looking at our guys who are bringing in the most income off of us and costing the most on our books. So we're going to have to make a change. You are welcome if you would like to take, a sizable pay cut, but I understand if you do not want to do that. However, I would like to work with you, get you a good send off that you deserve. And, this isn't any sort of, we would love to have you, but fiscally we cannot do it if we're going to keep this organization afloat moving forward. Doesn't mean we wouldn't want to continue with you down the road as much as possible. We cherish this opportunity to even have you around here, and we value what you brought to this organization. Something along those lines. And he can be unhappy or not. That's fine. But there's a way to do it. And I'm not saying that's not what happened, but doesn't it feel like it?
Yeah.
And it's just like those little things, like there's no send off, nothing, are the ones where you go like, that's to people in the league and people in the sport. That is one where it's like, oh, that's a red flag. Even if it's just weird to others, that's a red flag. I remember that when PJ didn't even get anything when he left Jersey, didn't even mention it. I was like, all right.
Yeah. It's almost like when that one manager left the greater Chicago area, right? And didn't get any sort of send-off despite being there for essentially the franchise's whole existence. Mm-hmm. And then several people later on, after looking into it, said he was still assembling a roster up to a week before he was told he's not returning. But remember, they were mutually agreed that he wasn't going to return.
Yeah.
Odd, huh?
Definitely odd.
Which is why people, when we mention things that may sound stupid, like, oh, what? It's not a big deal. He didn't get an Instagram post or something. No, it normally is, because it takes very little effort to have your graphic design intern whip something up real quick.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it is interesting that they seem to have less comments on this coach post than they do even on like their sponsored dumb posts. Like,
oh, that's interesting.
I know. I'm not. That's flimsy. A lot of the times there's other signs that things have been deleted or hidden. I'm not seeing that, but it is fascinating.
I mean, also, if you play the algorithm right, you know when to post to get it hidden.
Yeah, I mean, they posted 1 week to opening day, an hour later dropped the coaching staff, and then 3 hours later dropped a sponsored post.
we're just going to flood this algorithm real quick.
Yep. They put it in the
That
middle.
way-
That's
Yeah, we're going to sandwich it and we're going to put a bunch in like an hour-long period. So that way maybe the algorithm think we're just spamming stuff. So that way it doesn't promote it as much.
yeah.
Very
So I
strange.
don't know. It's just unprofessional and frustrating. And
Yeah.
again, we talk a lot about what's good for baseball, and what's good for indie ball. And you know what, dude? Daryl Thompson's good for indie ball.
Especially for an organization that's currently under pending litigation.
That is not good for indie ball.
Yeah.
One of their redeeming factors just got let go randomly. Not random necessarily, but I get it.
Yeah. Especially when they're a local guy.
Yes. So, pending litigation. Those who are familiar will recall the tragic events of last year involving a bouncy house taking flight and entering the field from like 20 to 30 feet up in southern Maryland.
Before coming crashing down and landing on the roof.
Yes. And unfortunately, there was a child who lost her life, I think a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And we immediately were like, this is
something smells off.
Yes.
Yeah.
And both from like our experience and I know my experience because like I've done the bouncy house training and I'm in the weeds on weird stuff.
Bouncy house certified right there.
We kind of had a feeling that this was going to become a lawsuit. Again, mainly from the way we've seen this organization handle the small things. And well, finally, and we kept kind of talking about, I wonder what's going to happen. Oh, now we did miss it. It's still under the radar, but 2 months back in February, we got an article here from let me see, Baltimore Sun.
Yeah. Make sure you send that to me so I can link in the show notes, by the way.
Yeah, I will. But there's a couple highlights here. I won't run through the whole thing, but the highlights are the company that owns Southern Maryland Blue Crabs was issued over $4,000 in citations last month by labor regulators who alleged that the club's employees failed to properly secure a bounce house last August when wind swept the inflatable away, killing a child and injuring another. The reason that is so big is because now going into court, which this elaborates on further, and I'll get into, it is already a group of labor regulators has already cited this as being the fault of the organization. So it really leans that way. It's still alleged. So I'm guessing there's some sort of appeal process, what have you, but it kind of shows where this is moving. Now, this is the former ownership. It's like something Crabs LLC or whatever. And that's part of why I think maybe this new ownership hasn't had a big formal announcement, because they're trying to not be associated with this thing that happened before they got there. Crabs on Deck LLC. I remembered. So it's an interesting spot. I don't know if that is what they're doing, but it is strange that there's been an ownership change and we're going to the season and there's just been nothing about it. It's strange. So that would be it. Then it elaborated though that the family basically is just saying the family is suing, and we can get a pretty good feel from this finding that they're in trouble. The team is. The specifics on what they were cited on was failing to follow restrictions on wind speeds, only anchoring the bounce house using 4 of its 8 tether points, and failing to properly train staff who operate the bounce house. My last thing on this of like why this immediately struck me as a brutal bit of negligence. Evident negligence is bounce houses are so known to be a potential issue that while I was in Lexington, which is a famously not very attentive operation at the time, with prior ownership, the
legendarily lax, some may say.
You're right. The person who was overseeing the kids area was one of the group salespeople, and she was a mother, and she was like very much like she kind of took control of that because she was like, this has actual risk to it, and I'm not going to see this happen. And tagged me because it was clear that like I'd worked with children before and that I had a good attention to detail to like also be a certified person who can work with that. And I say all that to note, it is not uncommon knowledge. It is well known that a bounce house poses risks and requires special training and certifications and processes. And it is doubly relevant at an organization where like 10 years prior, the same thing had happened.
Yeah.
Which is mind blowing to me. And I'm sorry, but if this happens, when I was in Wilmington, it came up that in the 90s, they had been doing a test run before opening day of having a parachute guy come down and deliver the first pitch ball. And he crash landed and died. And you guess what? You can't even say parachute around that ballpark. Like it's never. We're still doing it. We're still doing the bounce house. That's crazy. So all of this, that's my rant on negligence and not doing things the right way. And yes, this is prior ownership. I'll be clear to the current organization. So you'd think different way of doing things, but a lot of the same people are in place.
Which begs the question why any indie ball team has a bouncy house. Like,
yeah, it's time to get rid of that.
Yeah, like I can't believe that it'd be that much of a draw or attraction in a ballpark, and it's just not worth the risk. Get rid of the thing and put like fastest pitch or a small mini golf thing in, or literally anything else. I'll put a wiffle ball cage in. That'd actually be kind of cool. But
yeah,
these are all better alternatives that have a significantly lower risk factor in all of this. But yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing issue here, and it all goes back to improper procedure, right? Like not assigning blame, not assigning guilt onto any party here, despite what personal thoughts and opinions I may have on it. You gotta kind of acknowledge here that like you weren't properly running stuff if this was allowed to occur.
Right. And I mean, I don't even know that we need to tiptoe it that much. The fact they've already been cited for it. So
yeah,
it's just unfortunately predictable negligence. I think the moment we didn't even have like full story on it, we had insights from a couple players that were around and a couple sparse details from some early articles. And we were already like, oh, like I think these were the exact same three things that you and I talked about on the podcast. The same three sort of, they should have had it down in that wind speed. They probably didn't have it tethered correctly because there's no way it properly tethered, even at that wind speed. Honestly, that's a redundancy because you should have enough tethers in that at that level of wind speed, it won't go. And having a properly trained staff member to identify those things. And I said at the time, I was like, I already got confirmation from people. It was interns. Yeah. So it's just frustrating. We're not going to blame the intern, by the way, which I was going to say might think about doing.
Yeah, like that's the one thing. Like imagine being the intern in that situation. You're like some 20-year-old kid, and that's like a University of Maryland student or something. You get a cool gig just working at a ballpark all year, and then this happens here. Like that's just all because your boss like, oh, we don't have anyone to work that tonight. Go do that.
Yep.
So like that definitely sucks there. But yeah, I mean, like it comes down to if it was all tethered and whatnot, redundancies or not, even if those weren't going to hold forever, they were going to hold up long enough for you to notice like, oh, wow, this could actually go south very quickly. Maybe we should make sure there's no persons in this thing or begin to deflate it.
Yeah, there were so many off ramps for this. If this went the way that we can kind of see it seem to. Yeah, it's infuriating. But yeah, signs of trouble there. Now, again, to clarify, that is two separate ownership groups we're talking about, but a lot of the same people involved in the day to day. What else?
Who knows? Maybe. Yeah, I was gonna say we'll move on 1 second here, but who knows? Maybe this is the start here of just trying to get fresh faces in on this organization. Because I mean, it'd be a shame if Daryl's a casualty, and obviously, then if we're gonna make changes, we should change out the whole staff. But that's neither here nor there. It'd be nice to see then let's just go with a clean slate and get all new people in.
Right.
You know.
But, no, and not. Yeah, I mean, at least the people who are in that. A lot of the
leadership positions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about like the baseball side of things, but at least on the operation, like
I mean, the baseball office people haven't exactly been, hitting a lot.
I'm not sure what they're given to work with. That's all my thing. That my only hesitation on that.
I mean, fair enough, but also at the point,
maybe a little biased because he's an Alvernia guy, which is in Reading. So
The only point I'll say on that is like at a certain point, you know what your budget's going to wind up being, and you know where you constantly are falling short. So like maybe you reallocate.
Yeah. Though for the most part, I've been a believer that they get a good amount out of what they have. Though you could then assign blame on why they don't have more, but different conversation. We can. That sounds like a lengthy preview conversation.
Exactly, which we'll have next week. We'll swing it over to the BCL now, Baseball Champions League. That has come to a conclusion, and the Kane County Cougars were not, in fact, playing for a championship. They fell in the semifinals to Las Tunas, the Cuban team, and they lost 17-10. They fell down 7 early, cut it down to 4, then they fell down 8, then they cut that down to 4, then they fell down 7 in the 8th, and then that was all she wrote there. Wound up losing by 7, as we just mentioned. Tunis then went on to the finals. They played Diablo Rojos, which they lost to. So the LMB team with Robinson Cano and several other familiar faces, I believe Justin Courtney also on that team, wound up taking the BCL championship. Any overall thoughts on the BCL as a whole? I know we have a mixed bag when it comes to this tournament, but yes, any thoughts on the final?
I mean, a lot of what I felt last week and talked about, so I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. But yeah, I'm hopeful for the future of it, but I'm disappointed by the current product of it. It's just hard, and it's the same thing that they deal with international baseball. Anytime you're combining the leagues, it is hard to get where everybody is on the same page roster-wise, and they're not like way too deep into preseason or like even in preseason at all, and or postseason. Like it's just hard to time it up. And that becomes evident when there's the sort of, like, you know, issues with run scoring that we saw here. Like I heard from a couple of people, they were like, "Oh, the games are so entertaining. It's like crazy." And I'm like, kinda. But when you know that it's one thing when it's, you know, every once in a while, 2 teams show up and things, the hitters just having that type of day and the pitchers are struggling a little bit and they both hang touchdowns on the board and you're like, damn, all right, like the boys are swinging it today. There's other games where, like, I always compare some of the Pioneer League ones, like, you know, when it's been a long week, where it's just, you can tell they just don't have pitching options in this scenario. And it feels like, oh, this is just what's happening because that's it's due to a limitation, not due to an abundance of offense.
As far as getting to where there's a difference between, oh, the batting's really good and, oh, the pitching isn't very good.
Yes. Like it's almost a difference of, this sort of thing crossed my radar the other day, which is like talking about, if you watch a 0-0 soccer game, and a lot of the time there's, for instance, you're in a tournament and it's, you know, you already won the first game and you just got to win in the goal differential, and you'll watch one team just park the bus and play like masterful defense. And you're like, hey, it's 0-0, but like that is the game they're playing. There's other games where it's 0-0 because the offense is incapable. And it's like, that's not so fun. That's not as cool. And I think there's a little bit of that. And it sucks because I want this idea so badly to work, but also like it was a hard watch, in my opinion, quite a bit. And that's not anything literally to like the people making it watchable, like the broadcast and production team. They did a really nice job. It's simply, I just, the on-field product was not very good, in my opinion, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think part of the problem too is you do have a varying level of skill in each of these leagues. And I assume for a lot of them too, they do like the same All-Star thing the American Association does. Mm-hmm. Likewise, when you're playing such a high altitude, right? Like already you're gonna have offense juiced. Guys are in various states of preparedness, even among the same team, like you were mentioning. It's a hard thing to get all on the same page, and it strikes at such an awkward part of the year too, where it's like, I care about baseball. I don't necessarily care about this tournament, and I feel as though I would care more about it if it was taking place in like November, December. Like if it was coming in off the heels of like the World Series, I feel like I'd care more about this than coming in off the heels of opening day.
So the underrated thing that I think happened this week was the fact that they announced that Dodger Stadium is going to be hosting the Olympic baseball. Yeah. Because that means, sure, they could just put the Dodgers on the road for 2 weeks, but I think it is fairly likely we could see, especially with the number of major league players who want to play and who are being paid a ton of money to be in major league games. I think it's fairly likely that we see some form of Olympic break. And my hope is that this gets gears turning toward going that direction when it comes to things like this, or, the dumb stuff we talk about, like an all-star showcase type of thing in indie ball, anything like that, I think would be great. I'm a person who thinks, it'll be tough. We'll see. There might not be a good payoff because I think either way, it's hard to get pitchers to sign up for things because every pitch could be, your elbow goes sprawling and see you in 2 years. So it's tough, but it's interesting to see that development. I'm interested to see where that goes because there's a lot of good here. It's just year one. It was actually a very compelling tournament. Year one, though, you're like just happy to exist. Year two, you're happy to exist, but you're like, okay, like let's get going in the direction we want to see here.
Yeah, it's like it's concept versus proof of concept, right? At a certain point, you need proof of concept, even though I love the concept of it as a whole. And you can do all the off the field things right, but if the product's not there, it's really hard to convince people that are, by definition, psychos when it comes to baseball. Why else would you be watching it? To say, yes, I should choose to actively watch this at awkward times of the day versus watching a major league game that's either going on concurrently or in the near vicinity to it. Mm-hmm. And, obviously the in-person attendance is a question mark. That's something that's going to have to eventually be sorted out. And there's just a lot that's got to be answered about it, right? There's a lot of answers around it that need to get figured out. But I'm with you on a lot of it. Like, I really don't have much else to add to it that wouldn't just be restating what you said. It's just, I like to see it a little bit. I just like to see some tweaking done to it to try and improve the product. I almost would rather them say, like, all right, we're just going to find whoever to pitch and just load up on hitting if we're in Mexico and just put on a dazzling offensive performance. Because, like, guys like Dason Cruz were hitting over 700.
Right. So that's one thing. Also, it didn't help the numbers that Santa Maria team seemed not prepared for that. They give up, I think it was 19 runs per game on average, floated by a 31 spot that they gave up against one of the teams. And then the Tigres, they also did not, they didn't seem awful. They just had a couple of weird ones in there. They lost to that Santa Maria team, but I'm not sure how invested they were at that point in the tournament. That Titans team, they played pretty bad. They got smoked out 3 games in a row, 15-2 against the Diablos Rojos. They lost 14-9 to the Tigres team. They lost to Las Tunas. They lost 11-6 to them. So were pretty soundly beaten. So they expanded from 4 to 6, and I don't know they went the right way. I also saw there's no Cuban teams, and that's something I'm looking into. I got some feelers out because something is different going on with what's going on with Cuba right now. Because
wasn't the La Tunas team Cuban?
Were they? Hold on, let me double check. Because sorry if I'm wrong on that one. I thought that was the league that wasn't coming back, or was it Colombia? No, you're right. They were Cuban. You're right. Yep. Sorry about that one. But keep an eye on Cuban baseball. That would just be my quick little note on this because I've had, in my 5 years of projecting indie ball, I think I've had 2 Cuban guys come over and I had to project. I think we've got 4 so far this year that I've seen. So there's something going on, I think, but I can't put my finger on what. So that'll be something. I will say, though, for the future of this tournament, they do need to figure something out here. And I don't know if it's finding 2 sites to start for the first round or not. But because from an operations perspective, it's not very appealing. When the local team was playing, like the home team, the attendance was, I would say, let's go with 5,000 per game on average, with a high of 8,800 for one of the games.
Which is pretty good.
When they weren't playing, the average attendance was about 400.
That sounds
which
like a
is,
Jackal game.
I mean, the Jackals should be so lucky, but the cost to open that ballpark up, I mean, isn't, I would assume, the tens of thousands for a game. And I don't believe there's something that much when you're getting 400 for attendance. So that is something that I think does need to be solved at some point, potentially. Or I'm wrong. Like, or the finances could be fine. Attendance isn't the be all end all, but you know, you just figure you need people walking through the door and spending money to make it worth hosting. But I could be off on that, but interesting.
Yeah. I mean, part of the awkward part of it too is though that it's, if you wanted to host it stateside, the only American Association market that realistically, weather-wise, you could bank on reliably being able to do it is Cleveland.
Yes.
And I don't know if you're necessarily going to draw for that.
I'm also, another can of worms would be Cuban visas even to play.
Yes.
Which is a different conversation, but to get to Mexico is a totally different ballgame for them.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know even how the visas are going to work for everybody this year, so it's going to be very awkward.
Right.
For certain. So I think we talked enough Champions League. Let's get on to a few more things. So we do have a Kevin Tuve interview later in this episode to get to, and it is straight frontier run from here. We're going to go a little north of the border now, going up to Quebec because they have some leadership changes here. It's mostly in ownership. So if that's of no interest to you, you can move on to our next bit. But being that's Quebec, given the history they have, being that we constantly, talk about their organizational structure, it felt relevant enough to mention here. Jean Tremblay will be out of ownership. He's selling the remainder of his stock. He already had sold out of the majority hold to a minority owner, but now he is completely out of it. Philippe Tremblay, his son, is going to remain the minority or majority owner, rather, and will continue to hold that. Michel Laplante and Pierre Tremblay also are selling their shares, so they'll be either minority owners now or no owners whatsoever. And then Charles Demers, who took over for Laplante's position, will become a new minority owner. So it feels like they get a little bit younger in ownership, and some of the older guys or more established guys that have been there for the better part of a decade now move out there. No real immediate thoughts on how this will wind up affecting things and how it run. Quebec just feels like such a well-ran machine that until something goes wrong, I don't believe it will. But I do think there is something of note to mention when you are removing guys that have been there for so long from the equation.
Right. And remember, they have a GM change going on too.
Yeah.
I mean, the GM change, by the way, is to somebody that I think is probably very capable. And I don't think this is a change that would, I don't have reason to believe that this would be a harbinger of trouble. However, it's always dangerous to mess with a recipe when things are good. So, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll look at the peripherals on what's going on up there. We'll do just like we did with Southern Maryland, where we'll look at those things that tend to be like, nothing seems to be on fire right now. Nobody is screaming from the rooftop that there's a problem, but, we see enough to know that something's going on. So we'll keep an eye on it, and hopefully we don't see that, because I think, one, it's good to have sort of a stalwart, good example of how to do things.
You need it's not one paradigm franchise in your league.
And also, dude, you need villains. You need it. Frankly, I want the Ducks to go on a run, because I think the Atlantic League is better with the Ducks being the bad guy. Even if it's not even something that fans are super conscious of, if it is, every team is like, when I first started covering it, every team was like, we will hold, not every team. I heard from two managers in particular who said, because I don't like them, I'll occasionally hold, my best guy if I have an option, if I knew the Ducks are in town the next day, or if I can work the Ducks a little more aggressively when they're in town, because screw them and screw Wally Backman. That was literally stuff I was hearing. And I was like, they did not know me like that at the time. I was like, that's crazy. You're that open with this. It is. Because when there's an intensity and tenacity on the field, the product is also more enjoyable. So even if the fans aren't necessarily bought in or aware, I think it's a good thing.
Because you need the narrative. You need the narrative of like us versus them, the have versus the have not. And like, yeah, for like ever, it was Sugarland and Long Island every year with the two. It's going to be one of these two that's probably going to wind up on top. And no one else has a chance. Occasionally, Somerset would do something. Occasionally, you'd have like a York or a Lancaster that would pop up and do something. And like, I'm sure a bunch of people are going, well, Lancaster just won, back-to-back championships and we're in a playoff run too. They've had a pretty good 3 years, but it just doesn't hit the same as Long Island doing it. Their success is still fairly recent, like it's hard to really say. It's hard to find a real comparable, right? Like I'm trying to really struggle to find a comparable here, but it's like when the Yankees are good, they're instantly hateable, no matter who's on their team. Their players could be very likable, but you still root against them. Same thing with the Dodgers, right? But if you were to see a team like the Giants or the Royals go on the runs that they had, you're like, oh, good for them.
Right.
It's not that instant hate. Only the rivals of those teams are like, screw them. We don't want them to win. Everybody else is like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I am looking up the one thing, and this is where I struggle because I sometimes, despite my interest in them, I sometimes lack information about how they operate because there's just so much written in French about the team. But I am interested. There was supposed to be like a bunch of like $3 million worth of like renovations, like probably within the last decade. And I'm curious if that ever happened. And I kind of wonder sometimes, is this a shifting of who is the financial backer and investor in things? Because maybe they're trying to get a deal done for renovations. Cause I know renovations happened back in like, the 90s, I think. I think it's been a while since I've done some like legit big stuff. But
yeah,
I'm interested.
Them, I think they may have done something more minor, but this is an extremely old thing too.
Everyone says, it's a beautiful. I hear a lot of good things with the vibe there. I don't hear people trashing the facilities, but I also don't hear talk about the facilities being standout. So I wonder if I'm trying to think what would be the benefit of doing a sort of a switching of who the financial backer is, who's, perhaps borrower or spender, depending on what they might have planned. So there's things like that too.
It could just be who's there now, just wants to make a change and move on. It could really be that simple.
Yeah, it could be like they're done. They've done this for a while and they're ready to, move on to either the next thing or just something, they're just retiring, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with Quebec. Move on to the penultimate topic for the week, which is Tom Vaith being extended by the Washington Wild Things. He has a 2-year extension now. Deal was going to end after the 25 season. He'll be there to the end of the 27 season now. Manager of the year in 22, and a .606 winning percentage for him in his tenure there. He is 8 wins away from the franchise record for wins, and he was named manager on January 6, 2021. The only thing of note to ever occur on that day.
Wasn't grabbing the headline?
I don't know what. There was a whole crowd of people that really wanted to see him, and I think they
all went to Washington and just they didn't
wrong
know.
one.
Wrong one. That's
classic blunder.
Oh man! All right.
Riotous hiring.
I will say that it's a good move. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. Not to pump the manager madness bracket that's wrapping up here shortly, but he was a number 1 seed for a reason. I mean, the spiel I gave was, I literally have it here. It was, he's managed 4 seasons with Washington. He's gone 232 wins, 151 losses. So 3 playoff runs. Over those 4 years, he has a .606 winning percentage, and the team in the 13 prior seasons to him getting there had not been 600 a single time. And they've been over 600 on average over those 4 years. And then also had a tough year in 2023 and then rebuilt in 2024. So he's even shown like you can have a bad year and bounce back immediately with a good team. So yeah, I think it's great to see Tom getting extended. Keeping good in indie ball is okay.
Definitely. I mean, he's one of the better managers that's in the Frontier League in indie ball as a whole. To keep him there is big, and this is another vote of confidence in favor of an organization that we really do like in Washington. It seems to be very well ran. Hopefully they're able to get over the hump sooner than later. They saw the demon that is Quebec last year and how difficult.
Now they know the standard.
Exactly. They know how difficult it is to make these guys go away. So let's see. Maybe we get a rematch this year with a different result. And I will say, unrelated to this, I do think, because keep in mind with Faith over his 4 seasons, the first year was really good. And there was a dip in year 3, and then they came back very strong this past year. It makes me think of this should be an indie ball Mad Money show where we're talking of you got to buy the dip on Washington. It's a great investment. They're never going to be this low again. You want to go chips in on them. Sell hard on Southern Maryland. Bad tide rising there. Just go.
That feels like some sort of fantasy adjacent game we could play at some point. We can workshop that if you're into it.
We're going to make this part of the planning meeting over the weekend. 100%.
All right, cool.
All right. But yes, so really good for Washington there. Happy to see it. Happy to mention it. Last news topic before we get to the Kevin Tuve interview. Miners have an alternate identity. Now, normally we don't mention these because every team does them. But this one, there's something about it. Probably because there's an extreme
because you're Jersey trash, dude.
I know. I just didn't hear Pennsylvania trash talking down. I'm going to need you to go jump off your pagoda. Okay? I'm going to need you to do that.
Hey, man, it's called culture, and we have it. It's Japanese culture, technically, but whatever.
Jump off the pagoda for me, buddy. All right, so the team's going to play 4 games as the Fill It Up regulars. Inspired by New Jersey's full-service gas stations, there's going to be classic cars before each of them. The whole getup, phenomenal. Love it a lot. Proceeds from this, meaning that anything they raise from these, they're going to auction off jerseys, of course, things like that, are going to go to a local 4-year-old's T-cell. Here's where we're going to mess with the name of this disease. Lymphoblastic lymphoma. Fight.
Yeah, all right.
I think that's close enough. Those games are going to be probably not going to be right, but I think it's close enough to being right. And certainly I don't think anyone here is going to call me out on it. The May 23rd game against the Jackals, the June 27th game against the Valley Cats, the July 18th game against the aforementioned Washington Wild Things, and the soon-to-be-mentioned Rockland Boulders, New York Boulders, on the 30th of August. Those are the 4 dates for this Fill It Up Regulars ID. So, like it, works with the community, is relevant to the market, and they made it an event for these 4 days. Appreciate it. Like to see it. I also like to see that we're doing a lot more in the way of promoting the Miner brand, increasing the value of Skyland Stadium as a whole through innovations, and upping the value and the notoriety and notability of the team in the marketplace. It is a pleasant change from an ownership group that has been hit or miss in past years, suffice to say.
Yeah, I mean, I really no notes. I think this was a really, it's rare that we see something out of either Sussex or New Jersey where we go, and sort of are like, yeah, no notes, this was, you were on the right side of this across every box you could have checked. Nicely done. I think this was well done, well executed. I might have liked to see this would have been an opportunity. I know they're doing the pork roll Taylor ham matchup, which is funny. Yeah. This might have been a good opportunity to do a 2-team thing because it's a charity thing. I think that I have a feeling probably the other one's some sort of charity tie-in because most jerseys get auctioned and it goes somewhere. But I don't know. Maybe that was already probably connected to someone. So that's, I'm just literally looking that up right now. So maybe that's why I kind of would like to see that. That's the only maybe fault I could even find in it, but I think it was a really good concept.
Yeah, but also would increase the cost of running the thing too. You'd have to have the jerseys for the other team. You have to have the ID for the other team, and you need to find a willing partner in it. Now, I don't think it'd be terribly hard to find one. I'm sure either Tri-City or New York would go along with it. I'm sure you could probably talk Washington into it, but the whole full service or self-service thing, I don't think it really has such a hard line anywhere else that it doesn't really make much sense.
Because Oregon doesn't do it anymore, I think.
Oregon's optional now. They don't.
Yeah,
they let you do self-service. Why you would want it was beyond me. But,
I will just step in to say the Taylor ham pork roll one is going to a local food pantry. So like they nailed that too. So no nuts. They seem to do this really well.
Miners, Mad Money Miners. You want to buy it now. They look like a sneaky investment. They're trading low.
We'll have to workshop this.
$100
concept. I think there's a concept there.
Right now, they're trading like $5 a stock, people. You go ahead, you can buy volume cheap. It could be a good play. If you have the money in the account.
Before we go to the Tuve interview, can I drop in one last note that I need to get off my chest here?
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate you being patient with me.
Yes.
Those of you who follow the spring training schedules know there's basically two flavors of spring training game across indie ball. It is playing your travel partner, which a lot of teams like to do and also don't like to do because you don't need to. A lot of time you're playing that travel partner a ton already and you don't need to overexpose. Or you play very often the Black Sox. Black Sox have been discussed on the pod prior. I will not rehash. Personally, I very much like Joe Torre and the Black Sox. And I also approach it going, I totally understand why people would not. Acquired taste all the way. But I'm a Joe Torre guy. I think he's fun. I think he's good for the game. I think he's chaotic as hell. But I like that. He
also just did a thing with the Cholos thing down in
Yes, I saw that. So I say that to bring up, I understand if you are not a big fan of Joe Torre and the Black Sox, how you would be looking for alternatives. And I just need to say the Long Island Ducks need to stop inviting this like Dogecoin team they play every year, because every single year, while like other teams are facing Atlantic League to probably Frontier League caliber pitching, maybe Pioneer League, depending on the day, the Ducks are teeing off on dudes that are like in a rec league essentially. And like, this is like the third, maybe fourth year in a row, I feel like, that they've run up a 16-2 win in a spring training opener against Dogecoin. And I paid more attention to it last year, and I'm going to try to pull what I got here. Damn it. It's not there. Oh, hold on. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. Gotcha. Last year, I think we expressed concern that while other teams are playing like Atlantic League caliber teams, they're playing Dogecoin. So I was looking for a slow start. And I remember this because it looked good in the beginning. They had 3 games where they beat up on Lancaster. And then we realized Lancaster was not very good in the first half last year. And it really came to fruition when then they struggled like Staten Island. The struggles didn't go that long. They did have some trouble with like Hagerstown right after, and then they sort of started to hit a rhythm. But I'm just saying, like, maybe there's a benefit to playing like Atlantic League caliber teams. That's all I'm saying. And yeah, that's all I got. I would just say, like, it kind of makes, it's maybe even not that good for the brand when you're announcing a game against Dogecoin. You know what I mean? So that's all. That's what I got, man. I don't need to go too far into it, but I'm just saying, like, let's think about what we're doing here a little.
Yeah, no, I think there's value in actually playing a real opponent in that a group that could be charitably called a step above men's league.
Yes.
So we'll see how that works out with some of the other teams. I think a local partner is far better. At the very least, we're going to have a lower skill level. Can we just work in like a first responders type game like the Boulders do? Or at least there's a community element to it.
Yeah, right. I agree. I'm trying to see.
Find a local community college, play them. That should be fairly
They do.
decent.
Okay, I'll step in here. They do play the Black Sox twice.
Okay.
But it goes back to my thing of they don't play Staten Island.
They really don't like them. Let's be real here.
There is something there, man. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's interesting.
That's a different thing for a different time. All right. Want to intro this Tuve interview?
Sure, man. Wait, me?
I was going to do it, but if you want to, go right
Oh,
ahead.
no. Okay. The way you asked, I was like, I mean, sure, I can do it, but okay.
I kind of want to know how
like,
your intro was going to go. Now, I'm kind of curious.
Honestly, I had a note, which was I wanted to say I missed a question that I really meant to ask, and I didn't write it down, and I swung a mess. So I might have to reach back out because I really wanted to ask his thoughts on, remember, the Boulders front office is also, the ownership's also running the Brockton Rocks now.
Yeah.
So I should have asked about that and I didn't. So I apologize to everybody. I failed you, but I'll try to answer on that. But other than that, really informative, really fun interview. I like having him on every year.
Nice intro, noted failure, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a very fun way. It's almost like our penultimate start to the season type interview, right? Where at this point, if you hear Kevin Tuve on the show, we're getting close to the start of the season. But yeah, no, it's always a fun time. We went ahead, really discussed the roster, discussed, the now new changes to the schedule, new changes to the playoff format, and all that goes into it. So real fun one. We'll let you just get right into it. So without further ado, here is our interview with Kevin Tuve of the New York Boulders. Bowl Talk and Discussion returns to the show this week. We welcome back to the program New York Player Development Head Kevin Tuve. How are you doing today?
Guys, I'm doing awesome. And whenever I get to talk baseball, especially with you guys, I'm doing that much better. So it is a pleasure to be here with you here on a beautiful, beautiful afternoon here in New Jersey.
Hey, same here. I appreciate you hopping on, taking time to talk to us. You're in a lot of frequent flyer mails around here. So this month has been a lot of repeats on the program. So it's always great to see.
I couldn't be happier. I'm really excited to talk baseball with both you guys. And it's just, there's nothing bad about this. I mean, it's just fantastic. And I appreciate you guys asking me to join you for a few minutes today for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess on that note, we'll kick it off with a little bit of talk about last year's season, which overall 9 games above 500, solid season, fell just a little bit short. So I guess we could talk a little bit about that and the things that went into getting was overall a very solid result. I mean, what were you guys, about the 5th, 6th best in an 18-team league? Or 16-team league?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, yes, we fell short of of our goal from the beginning. Yeah. When the script was written, nobody realized, Alfredo Marte would, tear his wrist on his first or second swing of the season. Yeah. But that definitely put a little damper on things. But with the injury bug, as every team deals with all the way up to the big leagues, as everybody knows watching this, it definitely, it could have been different outcome. We could have been, a little more in the mix, but there were a lot of positives and things. We were definitely a lot more competitive than we were the year before. And, that's a testament to TJ Stanton and the idea of really constantly being on the lookout for guys at this point, which is ever so difficult in contributing on a daily basis, for sure.
Oh, absolutely there. And I mean, you guys did find a lot of solid competitors, a lot of solid contributors last year. I mean, a guy like Austin Dennis had a phenomenal year. Bringing a guy like Nick Goddard, who's a little bit older, but still very, very productive. Obviously, a guys like Quitzer and all the regular guys, they all showed up and they all really did step up and perform last year for you guys as a whole here. So I'm just generally looking through it because I'm looking through the roster year from last year right now just to refresh myself a bit. And I'm trying to think of if there was any kind of unsung heroes. Like, we know the names I just mentioned here, but there's some guys that kind of popped out that were like, ooh, coming out of camp, I wasn't expecting that from him this year.
I mean, it was kind of by committee, I don't know if there was any, individual names. There was some definitely McCoy, a couple pitchers that we had that were definitely, in that bullpen that were very good and maybe never got the credit, that they gotten. And a few of them are back this year. I'm excited about, this team. I mean, TJ Stanton has retooled this team. I've tried to add the ingredients anytime I can. But as we're going to talk about, I mean, the competition to find players I've never seen as tough as it is here in 2025. It's unbelievable. Players want to come to the Frontier League and they want to be involved. And the competition is insane with agents and with the Atlantic League and all these other teams jumping on board as well, of course.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have over 50 teams now across the 4 partner leagues, and that just creates a lot of competition for jobs and whatnot. And, obviously I'm looking through and I really see what you mean by committee here. You had a bunch of different guys last year that all really did put up fantastic summers and the whole there. And talking now a little bit more about 2025 here, you have Down East coming in, you have a realignment structure. So I suppose, how does that affect the way you go into camp looking to try and get some guys here? Because now you're saying, okay, as opposed to having to beat out like 8 teams or 9 teams for that one of those 3 playoff spots, you're now saying, all right, we got to win this division. And you look at the division, and honestly, I will say this much: I look at you guys as kind of favorite.
Well, it would be nice, we're be nice to be back, in that position as we were years ago. Yeah, I mean, the Down East thing is very interesting. I'm as interested as both of you and so many other fans out there to seeing how that's going to go and what their, lineup is going to be like and what their, ball club will put out there. Definitely the realignment. So very interesting. And this is something I looked at back in the fall that I thought was really wild. And I remember calling TJ when I saw it after the All-Star break. If you take a look at our schedule, we don't go to Canada, I don't believe once, which is something that is very interesting. I didn't see, and I could be wrong. It was a quick glance around Halloween or maybe it was November, early November.
No, I'm looking at it right now. I only see 4 Canada trips the whole year, but admittedly, one of them is Quebec right into Ottawa. So realistically, 3 bus trips up there.
Yeah,
and none of them are in the last one is the last weekend in June.
Isn't that interesting? Now that's never happened before. Back to Canada days, never. I've never seen that. You always have that mid-August like big Canadian trip. With Quebec, and so I'm very interested to see how that plays into things. Last year we did have a favorable August up there. Don't know that we took advantage of it as much as we thought we could and would have wanted to, but we had a lot of home games for 2 years in a row in August. This year, I don't see as much of a unbalanced July and August as last year. But the Canadian thing, I don't know. I thought that was very interesting. I don't know, I mean, look, any given day. But I definitely think that's, it's that long bus ride in that heat going up there. Guys are worn out. You're in August. So I like that. I like the schedule. I mean, I haven't really talked to TJ all too much about it, but that was one thing that was interesting in for many regards for players, guys with visas, and also the idea with, late summer not having to make that trip,
Oh, absolutely. I will say in August, there are 2 rather long bus trips. One is Evansville to Schaumburg and then back, but you have the day off at the start and end of it, so that's not terrible. The one that I noticed that does seem like it's going to suck is Tri-City midweek to Down East on that weekend, no off day in between. So that's going to be a fun bus trip going from Albany down to Kinston, North Carolina. Hopefully the air condition doesn't break on the bus. Otherwise, that could be a rough one in that 3rd week of August.
Yeah, I don't know what the travel arrangements are. There may be a plane trip involved in at least one of those. I don't know.
Hopefully.
Definitely haven't gotten that far. I don't know, what's going to happen. But I agree with you. If they are busing, like the old days with the Newark Bears are going out to that, I'll never forget that, digressing on this, but going back, playing the Grand Prairies and those teams out there on a bus with no air condition. I remember hearing the stories. When way back. So I agree with you. I hope the accommodations are there, and if they do end up flying, kudos to them on that. And I hope for their sake, that they do. But I agree. Those are definitely 2 challenging trips late in the campaign this year for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I'll let Ryan jump in at this point. Let him get some words in here while I stir up the next point that I'm going for. So Ryan, take it for a second.
So I'll go. We'll keep talking sort of the restructure, I guess, because that makes the most sense. Can you, for people who aren't as, I guess, in the weeds, give a little background on now what the playoff format looks like with the now 4 division, 2 league system, and then we'll kind of go from there.
So this is going to be like trying to put it in layman's terms, and I'm not even sure but the way I think. One of you guys said it earlier. I mean, it's almost like there's more of a stress to win the division now. I don't know exactly. I have not even. I can't lie and say that I'm really well versed on this yet. I haven't talked to Shep and I haven't talked to TJ. We'll have all this in camp, and which will be soon. But the way I understand it is there's more of a, it is a different format, but there is more of a stress on, really overall. I mean, not that overall record didn't count last year. That's silly. But on winning the division, I think it's almost more of a right, because you have wild cards are different. Am I wrong on this? I mean, everything seems to be very different as far as the structure goes to get into the playoffs. And maybe you guys can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah. My understanding, at least, that if I have it right, was either it's the top two in each division will play each other, and then those two will play, the two winners of round one will play the division winners on your conference, and then you have your final. Right. At least I think that's how it is. In fairness, it's been a minute since I looked at that, so it could be a little off.
Yeah, I remember when this type of thing was proposed late in the season, and joking with Shep from the league about that, and kind of saying like, "Can you explain this to me again?" It's an interesting, but I agree. I think what you said, you hit it on the nose. I mean, the fact of the matter is that you've got to have the pitching ducks in a row, no pun intended, back there, at that point in the year to make sure that you can line up with a short series like that, and also the idea of winning the division. So, I think it just puts more pressure, on getting those 2-1 games. I mean, at this point, honestly, I just, there's not a lot of room for error. All the more now. I don't know if that's too cliched or too general, but I definitely think that those games, that the woulda shoulda games that you thought and didn't pan out that way, I think are going to really come into play a lot more as we get to the end of this coming summer, no doubt.
I guess the end result would be because the prior format, while it had what I've mentioned a few times is the seemingly impossible task every year of being top three and last year an 8-division league, which is one of the toughest league to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
the Indy League.
The toughest. Yeah. One I did appreciate by far. I mean,
at least the result was, when it came to the wild card race, it was in your control pretty much. Everyone was playing similar schedules, and you were going against teams here in division. But once you're competing record wise with teams in another division who have a different schedule, that's where it starts to get questionable. So I guess, it really does emphasize winning the division, so you can not only, with what it comes with the playoffs, but also it just lets you control your own destiny and not, hope for the best when it comes to what's going on in the other side.
Yeah, that's definitely a great way to say it. I mean, I just remember a lot. Every team has this, and I just remember, those games in late summer, and the rain out game that you were down by 2, and then the rains came, and damn, we got to that one, and this happened and that happened. The unfortunate bumps and grinds of independent baseball. But I agree with you. I mean, this is going to be a very, very important year for not only the Boulders, but for these other teams. We have expansion, which is exciting as well. I'm sure for you guys, just the same. A lot of questions. And I'm seeing the caliber of player in this league really since COVID really rise, because you have young kids that are throwing the ball a lot harder than they did ever before. And you have pitchers that can actually pitch. And so things are changing for the good here in the Frontier League. And it's becoming, a very, very beyond interesting. It's becoming, the can't miss the type of baseball that the old Can-Am days you wished you had. Now you really have it. Plus they're expanding. So you have teams really, up and down the East Coast and I think they're going to keep going. I'm very excited about what they're doing over there,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they're growing at a great rate. And if I could just cut in here just to go back to the playoff structure here, because I did find it. Not on the league website. I had to go to a different report, but
I finally found that press release. I was proud of myself.
Yeah,
I was like, good job, Ryan.
Yeah,
I'll take the small win.
Exactly. So 8 teams are going to qualify for the postseason 25. Each division champion will receive an automatic spot for the playoffs, and then in each conference there'll be 2 wild cards, which will be the best 2 remaining records. Wild cards can be from the same division. Division winners will be playing the wild cards in best of 3 in the opening round. So there's no more buys. And then conference finals, a best of 5, and league championship is still a best of 5 as well.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to have to write that down somewhere.
Yes, it's going to take everybody a little while to, without the buys, it changes things a bit. But, I mean, once again, I mean, maintaining an injury-free season would be awesome. We've really, I mean, the last 2 years we've had just tough luck. The Marte thing goes without saying. I mean, that, within minutes, I remember coming to the ballpark after that. I had not even, learned of what happened yet. And I went to get Alfredo Marte's information for Yakertech at the time. And he didn't, in classic Marte kind of funny fashion, he didn't say anything. And then I was told minutes later of what happened. And it was like, it was that feeling that you had that was going to be the way it was. I'm hoping this year that the injury bug could stay away from Pomona, New York for a couple months. At least give us 1 year off. So TJ's got some room to breathe a little bit. But I'm absolutely excited for the new format, but I'm absolutely excited for the season as well, and to get things going and break camp very soon for sure.
I guess what I was going to say is, the schedule itself is exciting to me just because I look at and I see a lot of, there are some similar teams, but it's a lot of in-division opponents. There's a lot of teams that you are familiar with, and there's a lot of more regionalized teams that are in there. So there is a bit more of building a rivalry thing that can go on there, and that's something that's always exciting to me too. While there is also some mix of some more newer teams, like I see there's Gateway coming to town. I see like Erie's coming to town. I know they came once or twice before, but even still, there's newer teams there. And if you're watching along at home, you'll get to see the Boulders go to Evansville and Schaumburg as well. So you're getting a good mix in there, but it still does keep the core element of, playing the Sussex teams and the New Jersey and the Three Rivers and the Quebecs and Brockton and all those teams that, we've known for a little bit now and are familiar with and can really build up a little bit of a rivalry with.
It's funny you say that, because just last night, as I watched Fernando Cruz in the Yankee game, I went back to YouTube, and the people that I was watching the Yankee game with, I said, you need to see something. And I showed them the clip that you guys may be familiar of Fernando Cruz when the Jackals and the Boulders had that rivalry, and you just spoke about it. And I remember seeing that scene of Fernando Cruz running behind the battery, running behind the catcher, to take on the entire Boulder dugout. And Pat Butler, who's now some sort of a state trooper, I'm not sure where he is in his post-baseball career, but Patty Butler slamming Mr. Cruz on the ground and all hell breaking loose. Marcus Nidifer out there. There were so many, I don't want to say bench clearers, but there was so much rivalry, between when Joe Calfa-Prieta was there, Ed Ott, God rest his soul, were there with the Jackals. And, in those days, and I think that can happen again, and I think you just mentioned something that really sparked me with that, my memory, because it's been a while since we joined the Frontier that it's been different. There's almost been, a lack of, and I think what you just said, that the league really is capitalizing on this opportunity. I think there's going to be, Boulders and Quebec was always a rivalry years ago. Boulders and Jackals was big. People knew it, at the ballparks, and even over at Yogi Berra in the old days. So I agree with you. I think this is a great opportunity to redevelop, rekindle, if you will, the rivalries with these teams. No doubt about it.
Yeah, that's one of the things when you have such a large league, you have that luxury of being able to say, all right, we're going to almost have 4 smaller leagues that are part of this. You're still going to get some new teams, and there. It's still fun to see the new guys come to town, but you're able to really hyper localize and focus on that. And that, like you said, it was the appeal of the Can-Am League. Like, it was small, and you really only had like the core 4 teams, and then the rotators that would come in. But it made it more where you're like, okay, we're going to get to see Quebec, and you play them so much that by mid-June you're like, man, it's personal now with this.
Yeah. I mean, and again, now you want to go back and say pitchers have the advantage, or do hitters have the advantage? Weaknesses are exposed, and the Can-Am was all about that. I mean, these guys knew each other so damn well. It was wild. So I think we are going back, but it's a healthier situation because you do have more teams that are stable, and you have teams that really could feed into the rivalry. And like you said, the Can-Am for so many years was, you had the core. You said it. I mean, you had the core, and then you had those revolving door teams that would come in for a year or two. I was a part of one with Pittsfield way back in 10 and 11. So I totally understand, what you're saying, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think this is going to be a good thing because there's more, there's a closer knit thing. And like you said, nothing against you want to play the Western teams and all, but you also want to have more of a rivalry with the locals, especially Sussex and Jersey, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. It does also make the postseason seem a little bit more special when you're playing someone like, I don't know, we'll say you get a Tri-City in your second round here. And you're like, okay, now I'm beating an in-state rival. And then you get to that final. And now it's almost like how the World Series used to be, where like you never saw an AL team as an NL team. Like maybe you had one series, but like interleague play wasn't really a thing. It wasn't nearly as much as it is now. So if you're, say, like a Cubs fan and you get the Angels in a World Series, like, whoa, this is totally different. And it's kind of the fun of it now, where it's like, if you 100%. Are a Boulders fan and you get, like, say, Evansville, you're like, okay, this is new. I've maybe saw him for 3 games this year, but I don't know many of these guys. Who's this David Mendham character?
Yeah. And, 100%, I think, one of the complaints of fans over the last couple of years that I would bump into as I walk the concourse, over by us would be, hey, the Junior Arroyos and the Marcus Nidefers and the Marcus Solbacks aren't here. We want to be able to know the players on the other teams too. We want to, Joe Dunnigan was with the Jackals, who's scouting now in for big league teams, guys like that, the fans remember, they knew. This is a step in the right direction because now you're going to be able to remember a lot of these names. And if guys do like Justin Topa and some of these other guys, Frank Nigro, get out of this league and get up to affiliated, I think at this point, the best part about that is that you're going to know who these guys are. And that's a great thing, so I think this is a great opportunity. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because that's something that the fans at home really are going to be able to look for this year. No doubt.
Oh, definitely. Ryan, you want to jump back in? I know I kind of stepped over you a little bit there.
I have a dumber way to endorse the same thing, which is just going to repeat it, but I'm going to say it anyway, there is something about, seeing some different teams in the playoffs or what have you that kind of automatically establishes things as something different. And the sort of weird endorsement I'll give to that idea is I just was reading an interview with the people who made the backyard sports games, like backyard baseball.
Oh yeah.
And they said it was important to them that when you made like the playoffs or something, you played like some team from the other side of town that you hadn't seen yet. And they're like, because, even to kids, they understand, oh, I'm playing some other team now. Like this must be different and special. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I wonder if that will apply to indie ball anytime soon. And here we are 2 days later. So, all right. In art imitating life, imitating art. To a more reasonable point, perhaps, does it, I'm looking at it from this, and I, every year I go, this is the year I do a full deep dive into miles traveled. And then I don't, because it's a lot of math and it hurts my brain. So there's a lot of talk about within the Frontier League and around the Frontier League about footprint of this league. And I know that it can be hard to recruit guys because like when I was in Lexington, we have one travel partner when I was there, and anything else you're going to the coast, which is not a fun ride. And it was, there were a couple guys that didn't express it, but if anyone asks about the bus ride, it's a problem. So is it something that, whether it's from a recruitment standpoint or just logistics and cost standpoint, this new division setup is this helpful to the Boulders? Because I know more Jackals games, more Miners games, that's got to be huge. Is that in your mind offsetting the fact that you also have Down East in your league? You also have a new team in Mississippi, whether you go there or not. It's now within this large spread northeast to southwest footprint. Is that how much, I guess, was that discussed even as far as because I'm in the weeds on how a league meeting will go, and I like to know the logistics.
That's a great question and a great point too that you brought up. So obviously I'm not privy to the meetings. I'm not there. I kind of get the other version of like, hey, TJ, how did it go? What was said? I get it that way. And he does a very good job of kind of spitting it back to me. So as far as the recruiting goes, I think it helps big time in our northeastern area. Goods and bads. I mean, good, it is good because, we kind of, it's important to be able to beat the rivals. And so playing the rivals is a big thing when I talk to the college coaches, when it comes to, seniors that looking to play pro ball, aren't getting drafted, but want to play. And some of them can. So it helps in the Northeast. I don't know the larger impact yet. TJ has a very wide, as every manager does. I mean, a very wide, without using your word, I think footprint, you covered it, but there's a wide range of areas and schools that he likes to. He's a Florida guy through and through, so he definitely, he's got a brother that coaches at a very high level in Florida. So TJ does a lot of work there as far as probing around. I go to a bunch of workouts that I go to, and I'll throw him a couple different pieces as well. But I think this year remains to be seen. To answer your question fully, I think a year from now we're going to have a much better answer, maybe even less than a year from now, because I think we're going to kind of see with expansion and see with the realignment, does that change player procurement going forward in the next 9 months. I think TJ would probably have a better answer for you coming off this winter. Then again, in Quebec, I'm not sure the winter's over yet, but that's a whole nother story. 2 weeks ago, he had a blizzard, he told me. So, but going back, I think it is going to impact it. I'm just waiting to see how on the national level. I think in this area, when I talk to the Jersey coaches and I talk to we do, and we'll talk about the tryouts whenever, but I will say there is a June one we do where we do focus on bringing college seniors in. And that's where it's, Boulders, I've been to your ballpark. I hear that all the time. I played for, a team that used to play St. Thomas Aquinas, and we played there, or Dominican University, and we played there. So, Manhattan. So we hear a lot of that. But I'm curious to see as well. I mean, to answer your question without answering a question, I think it's going to be this year. We will know more about that in the next 9 to 12 months for sure. Definitely.
I'm trying to sort of get down as well. I mean, it's hard to talk about the season the Boars had last year. I feel Nick went 2024 to 2025, so I might as well do what I do to this podcast constantly, which is make it go backwards. Sure. Just one quick look at the 2024 schedule. You mentioned, how many times you're like, oh, like this game here, that game there could have got you in. But is there something that, you have found in the Frontier League tends to set the, I'm trying to find the best way to phrase it, because Nick was close on it, so I don't want to ask the same question. Certain aspects of the game and baseball operations stand out more than others. So, Pioneer League is just not giving up a touchdown in a game is usually a really good start to having a good record. On the Frontier side, though, is there anything that you've noticed seems to be sort of particularly a key to success in the Frontier League, maybe more so than others? Well,
two things. One of them is the old, and you guys will know this obviously, and so will the fans back home. But the idea of pitching depth. You get those rainouts, you get those double headers, you get those opportunities to use your guys, and then all of a sudden, something happens where there's a game is moved, the game time, or maybe it is the weather with the rain, whatever. Okay. And you are in a situation where you have to start somebody out of the pen. And, if you have somebody that has capability of giving you innings and eating innings, either way, I think pitching depth is a huge thing, that the teams that are able to be there in the end as we approach Labor Day are the teams that have pitching depth. I would say also the thing that's out of your control is avoiding injuries. And I don't know, as nobody seems to really know, what the cases are and what the individual, secret formula for this is. But I know that we've definitely struggled with injuries, and there's nobody's fault here. It's just what has happened. So I would say pitching depth, and I'm going to add a third one. I'm going to say also the ability to grab players, whether it's, from an emergency list, like literally we've had for years, from our tryouts, opportunity to have somebody to jump in and try to keep you afloat until player X is back in the dugout. And I think that's something that, for us has been very valuable. On years that we've been able to do that, we've been able to keep afloat with battling the injuries. Last year and the year before, we've had so many guys down that there's days where we have 5 and 6 guys that are out, and it's been very difficult. So, I'm hoping for TJ, and I'm hoping for everybody involved that for this year, we can avoid that, and try to hopefully we have some depth. We won't know that until really till camp's over, to be honest. You don't know that yet, but that I think that, the idea again of avoiding injuries, having some pitching depth, and having kids that you can plug into that lineup for 2 and 3 days that you can find, because it's so hard to do that during the season. We all know. Those are the three things that are coming in my head right now.
To give the out of date technology reference, the old Rolodex skill set, having a lot of people that you can call.
Yes, 100%. I remember doing it by hand in the old days. With Pittsfield and telling Brian Dahlbeck, okay, I got a guy. This is exactly, it always goes back to that. It always goes back to the old school thing. And I tell these guys who try out for us, we have 3 workouts, we do 3 a year, and we use guys from that list all the time. And, if we don't get them a job somewhere else, we use that list for us. And I can't stress that enough for these players that are contemplating coming to a workout for 2 days. It's important because that's how you get on our radar. And TJ literally has these guys on a list, and he's like, hey, I want this guy. And that was a guy that we had here in May or June, so it does help.
Which actually might lead nicely into talk about some of the showcases and tryouts coming up. Did I do that right, Nick? Is that how transitions
you did it very
work?
well.
Did I ruin it by then
transition.
pumping up my own ego by getting a compliment out of this?
No, it was well done. Good segue.
Worst co-host.
Yeah, so I'll throw it in here quickly. So May 3rd and 4th, the New York Boulders will have their free agent workout during spring training, with opening night May 8th, with the NYPD game. We play our I hate to call it a scrimmage, but our exhibition game the night of May 3rd. We do it every year. It's a tradition by us. And so it gives us an opportunity to see guys that, are battling for positions. So the May 3rd and 4th tryout is the first one. And we're currently working on that now. It's not a cattle call. It's not something where guys are going to come and sit on the side. There are not that many guys that are going to come to something like this. So it's definitely plenty of hands-on look. We also do quickly, gentlemen, a June 2021 for the college seniors, the college free, any free agents are welcome to come, but it's definitely geared towards the college graduating seniors who can't make the May one because they're still playing, most of those guys, on, first weekend of May. And then we round it out with the July 19th and 20th, tryout, which is our final free agent one. Our push before the trade deadline to try to grab a couple rookies or free agents in there potentially that we could use. Many times it's arms, but you never know. You really don't know, and that's why we accept all positions and we give them plenty of reps live. So exciting stuff going on for sure. By us in the next couple weeks.
Definitely. About the tryout, can you just walk through what's involved in the tryout? Because I know when I put together the tryout list, which has the links for all 3 mentioned, I kind of call it more or less a standard tryout. So I just want to make sure it's like we're doing infielding drills, live BP, that kind of thing. Just a little bit of what goes into a little more detail on the
100%. So 100%. Weather permitting, this is on a nice weather weekend that we don't have to move indoors or anything like that.
Yeah.
We always usually start off with the 60-yard dash. We will, which is kind of an old school thing, but we like to do that because guys like to let it fly.
Yeah.
We will then get into our, outfield drills where we're testing, hitting the cutoff man. We're 3 to third, 3 to home, that kind of thing. And then we go into a full infield where TJ or coaches, what have you, will have the guys take a full, infield. following that, on a usual tryout, we'll go to batting practice. We'll bring someone in to throw live. The guys will all get plenty of rounds of BP, and then we'll shut it down until day 2. In this case, May 4th is day 2 on our first one. That's Sunday morning. We'll come back. We'll have teams made, and we'll go live. And these guys will go live until every pitcher there has thrown. Even position guys who do pitch will get an opportunity as well. And then when we're done, and it'll go as long as we have to go. So that's kind of a standard, thing. Sometimes when it rains, we got to flip that, or we got to say, hey, it's one day and we're inside because the rains are coming tomorrow. But on a good weekend, fingers crossed, that's what you see.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just like to make sure that guys know what's involved in it, because then they can at least be like, okay, I know what I'm going to do here, know what I'm going to do there. And Lord knows there's a lot of tryouts out there. So, you can't make them all. So you want to prioritize the ones that give you the best shot at getting seen and getting signed. So
for sure. And we are the only team that does 2 days, so we have plenty of guys that will fly in from as far as Hawaii, California, you name it, state of Washington, and these guys are coming in, and ready to go. There are links on our website. You guys have them under your tryouts on your site, which is awesome. Very appreciated, much appreciated. But and that's great, because we want to catch the guys that don't know anything about this, that have no opportunity to see this. That's the goal. We've always, since I've been there in doing this in 13, we always talked about getting guys that don't even know where Rockland County, nor especially Pomona, New York is located. And that's what we want to do, is get TJ the opportunity to have tough decisions. So he's got to weigh some options. We want to give guys opportunity. That's the whole game plan. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know, just because you're not signed by the team that you're attending their tryout doesn't mean you're not going to get signed by somebody else. It's
100%, 100%.
Yeah. And everybody tries to help each other out. So if you have a guy that you can't use, but someone else that could use him, it's just a phone call over, like, hey, take a look at this guy. He throws good. Yeah. He can hit. He can feel. He can do something. So
we have a great rapport with Albert over at New Jersey Jackals. With Widge over at Sussex. Both are great guys, and both those guys, TJ or myself would help in a heartbeat, and we do. Jared over at Lake Erie, and Bobby Brown at Ottawa. These guys are all solid baseball guys that I have the utmost respect for, all of them. So anytime we can help anybody, up to Quebec and Mr. Scalabrini, anybody else, and I call him that because when you win that many titles, he deserves to be called Mr. Scalabrini. I would help and have helped anybody in this league or in the other league, anything we can do, old friend Jamie Keefe down at High Point, and any of those guys, Goose Gazzo. Those guys are freaking awesome. So, I will do anything I can to get guys a job, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And unrelated to anything here, I just got the press release from the Washington Wild Things that they extended Tom Bates' contract through 27. So he's going to kick around for a while too.
And much deserved, much deserved. There's a guy there who knows what he's looking at. There's a guy there who really knows what he's doing. He amazes me all the time. He's just very, very good at what he does. And, he puts together some, as you guys know, and the fans know, some amazing ball clubs over there. So kudos to the organization with the Wild Things, for sure.
Yeah, definitely well built there. And before we get you out of here, I do have just a couple things to mention real quick. One would be when you're going through like Dominican and Aquinas and all of them, I was partially gnashing my teeth as a Caldwell U alum. I was like, I don't like these places.
Right.
Like, these are a little too direct and rivalry based here. So I was like, I hope they lose a lot. Well, I'm sure Kyle Richards would agree with me as a fellow Cougar.
And and I give a shout out to the Caldwells and to the Bloomfields and all these teams, because there are guys on these teams now that can because we've decided, years ago and as a league to be able to really cater to the young kid who has an opportunity to actually play affiliated and to get out instead of the Jose Cansecos and God rest his soul, Ricky Hendersons that are stepping down, which are great for, hey, people know who they are, but we want to get guys up. And those schools, the Felicians, there are guys here that need to be seen, need to be signed. And So the last couple years, I've seen a lot of that. So in dealing with some awesome coaches and all these D2, D3, NAIAs as well, it's really awesome. It's excellent, to see that for sure.
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of talent that's just beyond the D1 level, and they just need the right showcase. And the last thing I do want to throw out there, it's completely unrelated to anything on the field. And I'm going to borrow from the Railcat podcast for those that are familiar with it, which is Promotion Talk. And I see two very interesting ones that Rockland's either going to, or New York, my mistake, I always do that, but they're either going to run or be a part of. And the first one is in May, where you guys are giving out back scratches, which is just interesting to me.
Oh, so good.
I kind of love it. And then the other one is at the very end of the season, August 30th, in Sussex, as part of their Filler Up promotion. So I'm just curious if you had any immediate thoughts on those two, because the Filler Up one, I'm not going to lie. At first I was like, that seems a little on the nose. And then the more I read into it and the more I was looking at the designs, I was like, that's actually pretty sweet. And I like back scratch. It's just kind of like one of those random giveaways, which is just kind of fun. You need one or two random ones throughout the year.
And I can't even tell you who and where that came from, but I will say it's zany, and we like zany. Yeah. So from the time we milked the cow on the field, one of our old owners doing it, or Nick Willenda walked the tightrope across, Clover Stadium, which I have pictures to prove that. Yeah. I will say that the back scratchers got to rank up there with one of the zaniest giveaways of all time. And props to anybody, who I'm forgetting that put that together, because that's over me. I don't even know where that came from, but I will say that is a great call pointing that out. And that's something I might want to get. I might have to find an intern to grab me one of those. I mean, that's a great call.
I may have to duck doing any sort of a press responsibility that day to buy a ticket so I get one. Normally it's just a text away, but this one I got to get. But yeah, I always like looking through team promotions. You never know what you're going to find. Like I said, the Filler Up one that you guys are going to be on the flip side of also is pretty fun, with a local team there in Sussex too. So, I guess on that note, I think I ran out of questions. Ryan, do you have anything else you want to add before we go into the typical 5 minutes?
I just like to imagine that at some point in the future, a guy's going to have a nice girl over to his place, and she's going to be like, I'm not sure about this guy. And then she's going to lay eyes on that Boulder's back scratcher and be like, you know what? This seems like a man who's got it all figured out.
This is a man of culture.
We'll start a long and beautiful history for the two. So that's all I want to shout out to that couple in the future.
Our very own with the Boulders, Seth Cantor, who's been the voice of the Boulders. He's been the on-field host. He's been there since day one when they were in a trailer before the place was finished. Yeah. And Seth, at one time was Disco Seth, and he would make this appearance every year. So what did they do? They actually made a Disco Seth bobblehead. And so I don't have one. I know Seth does, which is great, but there's got to be one floating around that ballpark somewhere. But I love the zany stuff and all these, with Sussex and all these. But I think that's one of those things like you guys do that you appreciate about the minor leagues and indie ball in particular. So keep up that stuff, whoever's listening to this, because I think that's part of that's what makes this what it is. And you guys cover indie ball so well between here and after Labor Day. And I'm just so excited you guys chose me to be on this show today. And I really, I look forward to it every year. I really do.
We appreciate character. We appreciate taking time to hop on with us. And I'll give you the 5 minutes now to say whatever you want to say, promote whatever you got to promote. But before you do, I just want to add one thing. I know this year when I come, I'm going to be up on that sunset deck with a giant bed sheet that says "Bring Back Disco Seth."
That's 100%, and I'm sure Seth from the booth would love to see that. That would be a great call, and you would make his day, I know, and a lot of Boulder fans who followed Seth's, him and Mark Renee's work for years. To follow up, I would say definitely, if anybody's listening to this, definitely come on out, check out Boulder's games. I mean, we have great, I mean, that place is sells itself. That place is gorgeous. The Boulders do a really nice job, from the Christmas and July stuff to the different theme nights, and the giveaways too. A couple years ago, Rick Pitino was there with the whole St. John's Ball Club. I mean, they do a lot of things that I'll never forget and that I've enjoyed over the years, even before working there as coming in with Pittsfield for 2 years. But I will say, again, with the tryouts, since that's coming on really close, May 3rd and 4th, I hope to see a lot of free agents out there, guys that are looking for a spot this season. It's for this season. And stay with indie ball, man. You guys are you guys are the best. You have an awesome reputation. I've heard wonderful things about both you guys, and I can second that, because you guys really do. You guys do something that never existed years ago, and that was a voice for indie ball. And I can't say enough how I'd recommend you guys, and you guys have an awesome show. And like I said, I'm privileged to be even part of it here, along the way as we get ready for camp to break soon.
Yeah, definitely. We appreciate it a lot. It means a lot there. Ryan, you want to say something? I could tell.
I was just going to say no accounting for taste, but I appreciate that.
But yeah, man, we appreciate hopping on with us. We appreciate taking the time. We always like having you on. It's like our little right before we hop into preseason, preview season, because from this point on for us, it's just 4 straight weeks of like Atlantic League, American, Frontier, Pioneer. And the next thing you know, it's Memorial Day, and it's like, okay, we're really in it now.
Yeah, I 100%. And I wish you guys an awesome season covering. I hope to see you. Definitely stop up to Rockland. I'd love to see you up at at Clover Stadium this season. Anytime, anything we could do for you, we'd be more than happy as well. So
definitely will be. Well, appreciate taking the time, Kev.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you at the ballpark. Take care, everybody.
As always, want to thank him for hopping on the program. Enjoy him spending about an hour or so with us, and I'm sure we'll be doing more with him throughout the year, and of course at the start of the 26th season as well, as it works like clockwork at this point. So yeah, on that note, that'll just about do it for us this week. Next week we're going to have the Atlantic League preview, and it's going to be preview straight out. I believe it's Frontier after Atlantic, or American after Atlantic. Either way, it's American then Frontier, vice versa, and then Pioneer to bring us home in preview season. So that's next month, is straight previews, and we'll have some more interesting content out there. We'll go into more depth about that next week, though. So we'll get to the plugs, and we'll keep it moving this week, so that way y'all can get on with your week. So Ryan, plugs.
I was going to say, spring has sprung. Kevin Tuve makes his yearly migration to the podcast.
It really is our version of Puxatani Phil when you get down to it.
It's beautiful. Anyway, Indie Ball Nation doing lots of preview stuff, doing like previews, for lack of a better term, on Instagram, just for like 1 minute hits on what to watch for each team right now. And then I'm going to do a really in the weeds one next week on YouTube and podcast platform, Indie Ball Nation, all that. I'm hoping maybe even to drop like a history, like a league history, like a thing if I have the time. That's not a priority, but if that does happen, I'll do it before I do the preview. So if you're like looking for a preview and I drop what is essentially a review of 25 years, don't be overly surprised. Yeah, except for the fairness of being surprised that I actually did content I said I might do.
I just can't wait for the no-co video. That's the one I'm still waiting with bated breath for.
You'll get there. It won't be disappointing, probably.
3 years later on, we're just one edit away. No-co won't exist as a franchise anymore. We'll still be waiting on the thing, but that's okay.
Maybe
sure, when it comes out, I'm sure
they still want to pay their bills, so it's fine.
Will they put in lights or upgrade from a trailer locker room yet?
Don't get me. That's something I'm literally actively. I have a call with an insider coming up, which talk about reasons it's taking for freaking ever.
I'm going to get a spray bottle, and every time you're saying, I'm just waiting on one more piece of information, just spritz you with it like a cat.
Yeah, that's fine. I could use that, honestly.
Bad, Ryan. Bad. Away from the keyboard. Yeah, so we should have a video or two up over the next week or so. Got a couple things here. They're more informal videos than, I've tried to create. I am working on the merger video. definitely want to get that out before opening day would be nice. But we'll see on that. Got a couple other things cooking, and we do have an article that's getting near completion. No details on that yet, but you'll know when it comes out if you're following on Twitter at IndieBallPod and all the other platforms, so mainly Instagram, IndieBall Report, everywhere else. So keep an eye out for that. That's all. We're nearly at the start of the season. Get tuned for the exciting stuff. We'll see you guys next week. But until then, don't forget to play ball.
No.